Welcome back to the channel. Here we are again with the follow-up tutorial of the FPV RC car Xbox 360 steering wheel mod. Fun for the whole family. This time I'm going to take you through the build process and provide some insight into how this was accomplished. Don't forget to subscribe so that you won't miss any future FPV content and special projects that may be in the works. The car used for this build is a Tacon Cavalry Desert Buggy. It has brushless motors and it's pretty fast. The car is perfect for this mod because Tacon transmitters are a simple design and are the same for all of their models. They have many interchangeable parts as well. It can be purchased on nitrorcx.com or Amazon. I'll leave a link in the description. Here's the plan. We're going to disassemble the RC transmitter, disassemble the steering wheel assembly, and remove all necessary parts. The transmitter has two potentiometers, one for the steering and one for the throttle and reverse. We'll be connecting the steering wheel pots directly to the transmitter PCB, and we'll rewire the foot pedal pots to replace the single pot in the transmitter. Let's get started. I'll try to skip unimportant parts of the disassembly, but we'll try to include anything that will help along the way. All components should come apart easily as long as you remove all the screws. Now we can see the transmitter PCB. The steering is a 3-wire pot going to channel 1, and the throttle reverse pot is connected to channel 2. We will not be using the pots in the transmitter itself, but I will need to leave the throttle pot for steering wheel test demonstration coming up. A little word of caution that if you remove the channel 2 plug while the car and transmitter are powered, the car motor can start to spin, so be careful. That's why I'm leaving it plugged in for now. This is the battery powered connection that we will reuse, so we'll set it aside for now. We're going to remove the PCB from the housing. Remove the antenna from the housing. Make sure all screws are out, and then you can gently pry the PCB from the housing. Use a small tool if needed to separate the glue. Next, to get started on the steering wheel disassembly, I recommend this Torx security driver set from Amazon. A link will be in the description. It'll make it easier to remove the security screws on the Xbox 360 steering wheel housing. T10 is the size you will need for this. First set of screws is for the base plate. Look for the hidden screws under the stickers. Then reveal a whole nother set of screws for the bottom piece. Once removed, we can start removing components and wiring that we won't need, but you will need to save a couple of things. The one cable we're going to need is the yellow, red, black twisted wire that is connected to the steering wheel pot. This cable plugs directly into the main component board in the steering wheel that we will be removing. The other component that we are reusing is the board that has the phone jack port used to connect the pedal assembly to the steering wheel housing. This board will be a solder point for our throttle wiring. All other components can be removed. demonstrate how easy it will be for the steering wheel connection. No soldering for this part, just simply plug in the steering wheel yellow, red, black wire into the transmitter PCB. And it works. Now the foot pedal wiring won't be that easy, but I'll try to break it down enough that you should be able to implement this universally. Now that we're done testing the steering wheel, let's cut the throttle cable from the transmitter. We're going to reuse this. I made a 3-wire jumper twisted cable from the same wire color configuration from the extra wiring removed from the steering wheel. We will splice this into the throttle plug for connecting to the transmitter PCB. Strip the wires, add your heat shrink, solder your connections, and heat the heat shrink to complete the extension cable. Now we're ready to disassemble the foot pedal. Remember the hidden screws under the stickers. Here are the 2 pedal potentiometers that we will rewire. This is the original wire terminations as found. Now you could end up with this newer, different style of pots, but the wiring concept is the same. Each potentiometer is a variable resistor that allows voltage signal to pass through the output on terminal 2, depending on the position of the adjustment knob. Swapping the 1 and 3 terminal wires causes the output to reverse on terminal 2. I made this diagram to show the parallel circuit that we will be using. Simply put, you connect the jumpers from all terminals on pot A to the corresponding terminals on pot B, then you make sure the number 2 wire gets connected through the phone cable to the middle red wire on the channel 2 transmitter PCB. I'll show you how my connections are done, and you can copy those and you should be okay. Use a multimeter to test continuity to determine your wire colors and board terminals. Once you determine your wire colors that you want to use, you solder the extension cable to the phone jack PCB. Just remember that the red from the transmitter will connect to the middle number 2 wire. Here's how my PCB wiring came out. Now I'll swap the wires around on the potentiometers and the foot pedal. Just connect the wires according to the diagram. You can copy my color configuration right here. If you use my same wiring configuration on the pedal pots and on the phone jack PCB, you should be connected as per the diagram. This is what you should have at this point. There are some adjustments and testing to consider before closing things up. There's an option to add an external power switch so you don't have to remove the battery to power down the unit. You also need to set the 0 for steering and throttle trim. These 2 dip switches can be used to reverse operation of steering and throttle, but if you end up with backwards throttle, I recommend swapping the black and white wires rather than using the switch, since you could end up with a shorter throttle response. This is the trim for steering and throttle that you could adjust at this time. Obviously, you want the car not to move when both pedals are not depressed. The middle trim will be used for the 0 adjustment for that. I'm activating 1 pedal at a time to test the response. I mounted the battery holder externally with double-sided tape. You can't see it here, but I used a Dremel to smooth out the side piece for mounting. The battery power plugs right back into the board. The last thing before I secure the board inside is to add an optional power switch. The switch will solder to the existing switch terminals, battery plus, and the terminal just above that. You can always leave the board switch on and take out the battery, but I had an extra transmitter switch laying around, so I decided to use it for that. You can secure or mount the PCB however you want. I just used zip ties and made sure that nothing will interfere. You should also secure the antenna. I just used electrical tape. I recommend checking everything before closing back up. After removing the phone cord, of course. The finished product is ready for fun. Let me know if you want to cover any future topics or tutorials, like how to set up FPV gear, etc. Thanks